If you're the kind of person who can't say no to family without feeling guilty, this is for you. If you don't fix this, you'll keep letting their comments and expectations run your life. Today I'll give you one rule and a couple of lines that make setting boundaries with family a lot calmer. We'll use them in a real Friday night group text where you'd normally cave or explode. If that sounds like something you need, stay with me. You're standing in your kitchen after a long day, finally thinking you have a minute to breathe, and then your phone lights up with a message from a family member. It's not hostile, not outright demanding, but there's that familiar weight behind it, the one that makes your stomach tighten. They're asking something small, another opinion on your life, another request to show up, another reminder that they expect you to run your decisions by them. You freeze for a moment at the sink, wondering when you stop being a grown adult and slip back into the role they assigned you years ago. The part of you that wants peace considers replying right away, giving them what they want just to avoid the guilt. But the other part of you, the part that's tired of bending, feels a quiet anger rising because you know this pattern too well. Here's the thing nobody told you growing up: family doesn't always know how to treat you like the adult you've become. They know the child version of you. They know the teenager who said yes to keep the house calm. They know the person you used to be before bills, responsibilities, partners, dreams, and your own path came into the picture. But they often don't know how to step back and let you have your own life without inserting themselves into it. You're supposed to be grateful for their involvement. You're supposed to take their advice. You're supposed to show up when they snap their fingers, even if your life is packed full. And if you don't, somehow you're the selfish one. Every time you fold inside this dynamic, something small inside you shrinks. You start believing that you owe them access to every choice you make. You start hesitating before speaking your truth. You scan their tone before you make a decision. You double-check how they'll respond before you commit to something you want. It bleeds into work, relationships, and your confidence. You lose time, you lose sleep, and little by little, you lose the sense that your life is yours. And if nothing changes, this pattern continues for decades. You become someone who lives around your family instead of someone who lives their own life. Today, we're going to pull that power back. You're going to learn how to separate your adult choices from childhood guilt. You're going to learn how to communicate limits around visits, money, advice, expectations, and emotional pressure without turning every conversation into a battle. And by the end of this lesson, you'll feel more like the driver of your life instead of a passenger in a car your family thinks they own. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. If you want steady Stoic focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships every week, this is the channel for you. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. First, we're going to tear apart the belief that you owe your family constant access and approval. Next, we'll look at why guilt shows up so fast when you try to pull back. Then we'll break down how to set limits without escalating the situation. After that, we'll practice the exact language you can use around money, time, and emotional demands. Finally, we'll piece all of this together so you can move through your family conversations calmly, clearly, and without bending your entire life around expectations that no longer fit who you are. In a bit, we'll walk through a Friday night moment where this actually saves you from snapping at someone you care about, and you'll see exactly how one simple shift in your response changes everything. You can't set a healthy boundary until you understand the first uncomfortable truth: you don't owe immediate access to your time, your answers, or your emotional energy just because someone shares your DNA. This is the shift that usually feels the most disloyal, because for years you were trained to respond fast, explain yourself thoroughly, and smooth out any tension the moment it appeared. But if you never change this one thing, your family will continue treating you like an always open, always available source of reassurance, labor, and validation. And you'll keep feeling drained, resentful, and guilty in equal measure. This works the way it does because families often build unspoken rules around responsiveness. They expect you to answer quickly because that's what you've always done. They expect you to jump in because you've always jumped in. They learned the pattern and they rely on it, sometimes without realizing they're doing it. And when you try to slow down or pause, they feel the interruption like a threat. Stoic practice reminds you that you're responsible for your own judgments, not theirs, and this is how a calmer and more focused version of you begins to respond instead of reacting. You stop feeding the urgency they create, and the moment you stop feeding it, it starts to lose its power. One sentence you can use to create this pause is simple: I'll look at this later and get back to you when I can. It's neutral, calm, and gives you breathing room. If someone pushes, you add, right now isn't a good moment, but I'll follow up. You're not attacking, you're not defending, and you're not over-explaining. You're creating space, and space is the doorway to better boundaries. Picture this: it's a Tuesday morning in the U.S. You're halfway through a workday, juggling Slack messages and a deadline you're trying to hit before lunch. Your mom texts you asking whether you've thought about switching jobs again because she heard something on the news about layoffs in your industry. You feel the familiar irritation bubbling up, not at her concern, but at the timing and the pressure to respond right now. The old reaction would look like this: you stop everything, read the text twice, get annoyed, text back a long reassurance, and then spend the next hour overthinking how she interpreted your tone. Meanwhile, your focus is blown. But the new response is different. You see the message pop up. You breathe once. Then you type, I'll look at this later and get back to you when I can. You put your phone face down and return to your work. No guilt. No essay. No explaining your reasoning. Later that night, when you're actually free, you send a short reply like, I'm good right now, but I appreciate you checking in. You didn't let the conversation hijack your day. You didn't escalate anything. You didn't abandon your responsibilities to soothe someone else's anxiety. You acted like an adult managing an adult life, not a child reporting in. Today, your tiny action is to set one reply window for family messages. Pick a time of day that works for you, maybe after dinner, maybe early afternoon, maybe during a midday break, and decide that messages outside that window don't automatically get your attention. You don't need to announce this window to anyone. You just need to follow it. Take a moment right now and settle into it with me. Inhale slowly. Hold it. Exhale just as slowly. Let your shoulders drop a little. Say the sentence quietly to yourself, I'll look at this later and get back to you when I can. Say it again, but slower this time, so your body can memorize what calm sounds like coming from your own mouth. This pause isn't disrespectful. It's self-respect in action. When you practice this line enough, it starts to feel natural, and when it feels natural, you stop being pulled around by every notification that lights up your screen. Hold on to this idea, because we're going to stress test it later when the pressure gets higher and the emotional heat rises. It's in those moments that this one shift, the pause, the delayed response, the space you're building, becomes the difference between an argument that ruins your evening and a calm boundary that protects it. There's a moment that happens right before you try to set a boundary with family. It's quick, almost automatic, and it feels like a punch of guilt hitting your chest. That guilt is the biggest reason people abandon their boundaries before they even say them out loud. You worry about disappointing someone, or you imagine the sigh on the other end of the phone, or you picture the look they'll give you the next time you visit. If you don't learn how to control that inner guilt spike, every limit you try to set will collapse under it. And when that happens, you don't just lose the boundary, you lose trust in yourself. This guilt shows up because your nervous system learned something long ago: keeping the peace was safer than being honest. Maybe raising your needs created tension in the house. Maybe someone reacted dramatically whenever you asked for space. Maybe being easy or helpful got you approval, while being firm got you labeled as difficult. So as an adult, guilt gets triggered even when the situation is harmless. It's not logical. It's familiar. And your body often confuses familiar with safe. But as Marcus notes in Meditations 5.20, most distress comes from the stories you attach to events, not from the events themselves. When you start to separate the guilt story from the present moment, you reclaim the ability to choose your response instead of surrendering to old programming. This is how a more grounded version of you handles family expectations without melting under them. One sentence that helps you cut through the guilt is, I'm allowed to make this decision even if someone else doesn't like it. Say it once, slowly. It interrupts the old belief that you need universal approval before acting. And if someone pushes back, another line helps anchor you, I hear you, but I'm choosing what works for me. Neither line attacks. Neither line apologizes. They simply state that you exist as an adult with agency. Imagine this, you're in your apartment on a Sunday morning in Toronto or Seattle, sipping coffee, trying to relax before the week starts. Your aunt calls out of the blue. She wants to know why you're not coming to a cousin's birthday lunch, one you weren't even invited to until late last night. You explain that you already made plans with friends. She sighs loudly and says something like, you know family should come first. Everyone is expecting you. Immediately, the guilt shoots up your spine. You picture her telling other relatives you don't care. You imagine being discussed, judged, and misunderstood. The old reaction would be to cancel your plans, throw on clothes, and rush over just to avoid being talked about. But something different happens this time. You breathe once before answering. You remind yourself internally, I'm allowed to make this decision even if someone else doesn't like it. Then you say, calmly, I hear you, but I'm choosing what works for me. Your tone is steady, not defensive. She may try again, people often do, but you stay on the same line. After a moment, she backs down because you didn't escalate and you didn't apologize. When you hang up, you feel a quiet strength in your chest. You didn't betray your family. You simply refused to betray yourself. Your tiny action today is to write that one sentence somewhere visible, on a note in your phone, on a card in your wallet, or on a sticky note near your desk. The sentence is, I'm allowed to make this decision even if someone else doesn't like it. You're not writing it to memorize words, you're writing it to challenge a belief that has shaped too much of your adult life. When guilt spikes, you don't negotiate with it. You anchor yourself with the line and let the emotion pass before you act. Right now, take a slow breath with me. Inhale through your nose, hold it, exhale through your mouth. Feel the drop in your shoulders. Say the line quietly, not rushed. Then say it again, slower, I'm allowed to make this decision even if someone else doesn't like it. Let your body absorb the idea. Let it settle in your chest. Old guilt patterns don't disappear overnight, but they lose power every time you refuse to act on them. Keep this phrase close, because later in the story we'll walk through a moment where the guilt spike shows up hard and fast, right before a family member tries to pull you into their emotional storm. And you'll see how this one sentence is the thing that stops you from abandoning yourself in the moment you need strength the most. There's a pattern that happens in almost every family. Someone gives advice you didn't ask for, and you feel obligated to absorb it with a smile. It doesn't matter if the advice is outdated, irrelevant, or ignores everything you've already figured out about your own life. You nod, you say thanks, and then you walk away annoyed. If you never interrupt this pattern, your family will keep treating your choices like open consultations. And you'll keep feeling like you have to justify every move you make, even when nobody has earned that level of access. Advice feels heavy because it's rarely just advice. It often carries a silent message underneath, you don't know what you're doing, or your way isn't the right way, or we still get a say in how you live. That's why it hits so deep. But most people aren't trying to sabotage you, they're acting out a familiar role. In many families, giving advice is how people feel useful, connected, or relevant. The problem is when they use your life as the place to feel that usefulness without noticing how intrusive it feels. When you accept every suggestion without pushing back, you reinforce the idea that your adulthood is negotiable. The moment you stop reinforcing it, the dynamic shifts. As Seneca reminds Lucilius in one of his letters, the opinions of others don't define your direction unless you hand them the wheel. This is how you start reclaiming the wheel. One line helps you set a limit without inviting an argument. I hear what you're saying, but I'm handling it. If they keep pushing, add, I'll reach out if I need advice. These lines aren't confrontational. They're simple statements of fact. They acknowledge the other person's intent without giving them authority over your decisions. And most importantly, they prevent you from falling into explanations that drain your energy. Picture this in a real North American moment. You're at a family dinner in Chicago, Vancouver, or suburban New Jersey. You mention in passing that you're thinking of moving to a new neighborhood because your lease is ending soon. Immediately, someone at the table, maybe your dad, maybe an older sibling, maybe a cousin, jumps in with a list of reasons why your idea is terrible. The area isn't safe enough. The commute is too long. The rent is too high. They know someone who moved there once and hated it. They go on and on while the rest of the table piles in with their own helpful opinions. You feel cornered, irritated, and small. The old reaction would be to defend your choice in detail. You'd start explaining your income, the rent market, your plans, and your long-term goals. You'd argue quietly in circles, hoping they'll understand, even though they rarely do. You'd leave dinner feeling drained and maybe even doubting a choice you were excited about earlier. But today, something different happened. You listen for a moment, then calmly say, "I hear what you're saying, but I'm handling it." You keep your tone even. Someone insists they're just trying to help. You nod once and reply, "I'll reach out if I need advice." That's it. No essays. No defending. No outburst. They may look surprised because you didn't give them the performance they expected. You didn't shrink or apologize. You didn't fight. You simply closed the door on the topic. Later, when you go home, you notice something. The decision still feels like your decision. And your confidence is intact. Your tiny action today is to choose one area of your life where you will no longer accept uninvited advice. Maybe it's your career. Maybe your relationships. Maybe your parenting. Maybe your finances. Pick one. When someone offers input you didn't ask for in that area, practice the line, "I hear what you're saying, but I'm handling it." Don't soften it. Don't over-explain. You're training your voice to sound like your life belongs to you. Right now, let's slow down together. Take one deep breath in, hold it, and exhale. Feel the air release from your chest. Then say the sentence under your breath, "I hear what you're saying, but I'm handling it." Say it again, slower this time so your body learns how steadiness feels. You're not rejecting anyone's love. You're redefining how that love interacts with your life. You're showing your nervous system a new way to respond, calm, clear, and grounded. Keep this line nearby, because when we get to that Friday night situation later, someone is going to give you a piece of advice at the worst possible moment. And you'll see how this one sentence keeps you from losing your evening to someone else's opinion. There's a moment every adult eventually faces with family. Someone asks for your time, your money, or your emotional labor, and you feel that familiar internal pull, the instinct to say yes even though your whole body is saying no. You don't want to disappoint anyone. You don't want to be seen as selfish. You don't want to trigger a lecture, a guilt trip, or an argument. But if you continue saying yes when you mean no, your life becomes a series of obligations you never intentionally chose. And every silent yes chips away at the space you need to build your own future. This happens because most families operate on old assumptions about your availability. If you were the reliable one as a kid, they still expect reliability without limits. If you were the peacemaker, they still expect you to smooth things over. If you were the helper, they expect you to help, even if you're stretched thin, even if you're exhausted, even if saying yes puts you in a bind. People rarely question the roles they benefit from. And if you've played the same role for years, they assume it's who you are, not a pattern you learned to survive. When you break that pattern, they feel the change long before they understand it. But as Epictetus notes in the Enchiridion, your primary task is mastering what's within your control, and other people's expectations aren't in your control. This is where you begin to live by intention rather than obligation. Here's the line that shifts everything: I can't do that, but I hope you find what you need. It's clean. It's respectful. It's final. You're not offering explanations, because explanations usually invite negotiation. You're not apologizing excessively, because too much apologizing signals uncertainty. You're simply stating your limit and closing the loop. And if someone pushes you, you follow with, "That doesn't work for me." These two lines are boundary anchors. They help you stay calm when someone tries to pull you back into the role you're trying to outgrow. Imagine this. You're living in Denver or Boston, working through a long week, trying to manage bills, deadlines, and the little bit of energy you have left. Then a sibling calls. They're short on cash, again, and they need you to spot them a few $100s until payday. The moment they ask, you feel that familiar tightness in your chest. You've helped before. You've stretched yourself thin before. And each time you tell yourself, "It's family, I shouldn't say no." But afterward, you always felt drained, sometimes resentful, sometimes embarrassed to admit you put yourself at risk to bail someone else out. The old reaction would kick in fast. You'd tell yourself you can figure it out. You'd send the money even if it meant delaying a bill or tapping into savings you were trying to protect. You'd reassure them while ignoring the stress in your own body. And then you'd spend the next 2 days worrying about whether you made a mistake. This pattern is how people lose months, sometimes years, of financial and emotional stability. But the new response looks different. Your sibling asks, their voice loaded with expectation. You breathe slowly. You remind yourself that your needs matter, too. Then you say, "I can't do that, but I hope you find what you need." Your voice is steady. They push back, insisting it's urgent, saying you're the only one who can help. You don't argue. You don't justify. You simply repeat, "That doesn't work for me." There's a pause. They may feel frustrated. They may send a guilt-tinged comment. But you don't bend. When you hang up, you notice something powerful. You protect your stability without attacking anyone. You didn't abandon yourself to maintain peace. You acted like someone who recognizes their life has limits and value. Your tiny action today is to name one resource you're no longer loaning to your family without intentional choice. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's rides, emotional labor, planning, last-minute rescues, or being the person who always rearranges their schedule. Pick one. Write it down. Then write the sentence next to it, "I can't do that, but I hope you find what you need." This is your line for the next time someone assumes you'll overextend yourself for them. Take a moment right now and breathe with me. Inhale gently, hold, exhale slowly. Let your shoulders drop an inch. Then say it softly, "I can't do that, but I hope you find what you need." Say it again, slower, and notice how it feels in your throat and chest. You're not rejecting anyone. You're respecting the truth of your capacity. You're teaching your nervous system a new way of being, one that protects your energy instead of draining it. Keep this boundary close, because later, in that Friday night moment we're building toward, someone will ask you for something at the worst possible time, your attention, your presence, or your emotional labor. And you'll see how using this one sentence redirects the entire evening toward peace instead of chaos. There's a specific kind of pressure families use without meaning to. It's not yelling. It's not demanding. It's that subtle emotional pull, the disappointed silence, the "I guess we just won't see you then," the reminder that someone is getting older and doesn't know how much time they have left, the suggestion that you're drifting away. These comments land harder than most people admit. They make you question whether you're being cold. They make you wonder if you're failing at being a good son, daughter, sibling, or grandchild. If you don't learn how to handle that emotional pull, you end up rearranging your life, your schedule, and sometimes your values just to suit someone else's feelings. And the cost is always the same: your peace, your autonomy, your time, and the plans you actually wanted for yourself. This dynamic is powerful because emotional pressure bypasses logic entirely. It hits your nervous system the way guilt does, fast, deep, and familiar. Growing up, keeping the peace was often a survival strategy. It kept things calm. It kept relationships stable. It made you feel like you were doing the right thing. So now, as an adult, when someone in your family uses emotional pressure, your body responds before your mind does. But when you understand what's happening, you create a separation between their feelings and your responsibility. You stop assuming that every emotion they express requires action from you. You start to realize, as many Stoic thinkers emphasize, that other people's judgments belong to them, not to you. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. One sentence that anchors you in that clarity is this: I care about you, but I'm not able to do that. If they use more emotional weight, you can add, your feelings matter, but this still doesn't work for me. These two lines protect your compassion without sacrificing your boundaries. They show love without giving up your life. And most importantly, they prevent you from being pulled into an old emotional script that doesn't serve who you are now. Picture this in a real moment. It's a Saturday afternoon in Minneapolis or Toronto. You finally have a free weekend. You're planning to rest, clean your space, or catch up with someone you haven't seen in months. Then your dad calls asking if you can drive over and help him with something around the house. You hesitate. You know it's not urgent. You know he has other people he can call. But he adds, I just thought you might want to spend some time with me. I don't know how many weekends like this we'll have left. That sentence hits you right in the chest. Suddenly your afternoon feels like it belongs to his emotion instead of your plans. Your old reaction would be immediate. You'd feel a tightness in your throat, a heaviness in your stomach. You'd abandon your plans, grab your keys, and drive over. You'd tell yourself, I'll have time for myself later, knowing deep down that later almost never comes. You'd show up tired, irritated, or hollow, but you'd force a smile. Then, when the day ended, you'd feel wiped out and maybe even quietly resentful. That's what emotional pressure does. It takes more from you than anyone realizes. But today, something shifts. You hear the sentiment in your dad's voice, but you don't let it dictate your choices. You breathe once, letting the emotional pressure move through you without reacting. Then you say, gently but firmly, I care about you, but I'm not able to do that. He might push back. He might use a heavier tone. That's when you add, your feelings matter, but this still doesn't work for me. You're calm. You're not defensive. You're not cold. You're simply holding your line. After a moment, he accepts it, maybe reluctantly, maybe quietly, but he accepts it. And you keep your afternoon. You keep your energy. You keep the feeling that your life belongs to you. Your tiny action today is to choose one emotional hook that no longer gets to control your decisions. Maybe it's the guilt-tinged we never see you anymore. Maybe it's the sentimental family should come first. Maybe it's the pressure of you're the only one who helps. Name it. Write it down. Then match it with the anchor phrase, I care about you, but I'm not able to do that. You're creating a pairing your nervous system can rely on. When the hook appears, the anchor follows. Let's slow down for a moment. Close your eyes if you want. Inhale deeply, hold, let the breath fall out slowly. Feel your shoulders relax. Then say it quietly, I care about you, but I'm not able to do that. Say it again, slower, softer, with calm behind the words. You're not rejecting anyone. You're refusing to sacrifice your well-being for someone else's momentary discomfort. You're learning the difference between compassion and compliance. Hold this line close, because soon we'll get to a moment where emotional pressure hits you unexpectedly, and you'll see how this one shift prevents an entire evening from being derailed. There's a subtle skill most people never learn, recognizing when you're being pulled into a role you didn't agree to play. Families are experts at assigning roles: helper, fixer, listener, mediator, the one who always shows up, the one who never complains. You may have internalized one of these roles years ago without realizing it. And every time you talk to certain relatives, you feel yourself slipping back into that identity, almost like muscle memory. If you don't learn how to spot the moment this role tries to reclaim you, you'll keep living inside an outdated version of yourself. And that version isn't strong enough to hold the boundaries you're trying to build now. This happens because family interactions often bypass your adult identity. They activate older emotional templates, patterns wired long before you had a fully developed sense of self. It's why you can be confident at work but suddenly feel 12 years old around your parents. It's why you can lead a team on Monday and still feel intimidated when a sibling uses a certain tone. The pull toward the old role is strong because it's familiar, and your nervous system learned that familiarity equals safety. But as you grow, the role stops fitting. It limits your behavior, your decisions, and your sense of agency. The moment you recognize the pull, you create a gap between who you were and who you're becoming. And once that gap appears, you can choose instead of obeying old reflexes. Here's the microscript that interrupts the pull: I'm not stepping into that role anymore. You don't have to say it out loud, though you can if the moment calls for it. Saying it inside your mind is enough to break the automatic pattern. If someone tries to treat you like the fixer, the problem solver, the one who drops everything, this sentence helps your brain remember, you are not obligated to become the version of yourself they expect. You're allowed to stay in the present moment as the adult you actually are. Let's bring this into a real North American scenario. You're spending an evening at your mom's house in Atlanta, Calgary, or Portland. It's supposed to be a simple visit, maybe dinner, maybe catching up. But halfway through, a familiar tension starts to form. Your younger brother is venting about his job again, going in circles, refusing any solutions. He's frustrated, dramatic, and looking for someone to stabilize him emotionally. That someone has always been you. Every holiday, every family gathering, every crisis, people turn to you to mediate, to soothe, to fix. And before you even realize it, you're offering advice, managing the emotional temperature, trying to prevent conflict between him and your mother. You're back in the role. Your old reaction would be automatic: step in, smooth everything out, and carry the emotional weight. You get caught in the dynamic, lose your evening, and leave feeling exhausted and unseen. You'd wonder why everyone leans on you so heavily. You'd resent it quietly but still repeat it next time, because deep down the role feels expected. But this time, you catch it. Not instantly, but soon enough. You feel that familiar pull in your chest, the urge to fix, the instinct to stabilize. And in that split second, you say to yourself, I'm not stepping into that role anymore. You breathe once before speaking. Your brother continues venting, your mother glances at you as if cueing you to intervene, but you don't take the bait. Instead, you say calmly, I hear you're frustrated, but I'm not getting in the middle of this. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't explain. You simply refused the role. Your brother might look surprised. Your mother might look confused. But something important happens: the emotional responsibility falls back to where it belongs. You're not fixing the situation. You're not mediating. You're not absorbing stress that isn't yours. And when the conversation moves on, you feel something rare, a sense of emotional neutrality, a sense of freedom in your chest. You didn't perform the old identity. You stayed in your present one. Your tiny action today is to name the old family role you no longer want to inhabit. It might be the responsible one, the helper, the listener, the mediator, or the problem solver. Once you name it, write the sentence next to it: I'm not stepping into that role anymore. Keep it somewhere you'll see it. You're training your brain to recognize when the pull starts so you can interrupt it before it takes over. Right now, take a slow breath with me. Inhale deeply, hold it, exhale slowly. Let your shoulders relax and say quietly, I'm not stepping into that role anymore. Say it again, slower this time. Feel how different it sounds compared to the version of you who used to abandon your needs to play the part everyone expected. This is how you rewire your identity, not with force, but with awareness, repetition, and calm refusal. Keep this line close, because later, when we reach that Friday night moment, someone will try to pull you right back into your old identity, expecting you to fix, smooth, or rescue. And you'll see exactly how this one sentence protects your peace and keeps you from repeating a role you've outgrown. There's a point in every boundary journey where you realize the conflict isn't actually with your family, it's with the part of you that still feels responsible for their reactions. You worry how they'll take it. You imagine their disappointment. You rehearse their responses in your head, trying to predict every possible outcome. You walk into conversations already bracing for impact. And if you don't learn how to detach your decisions from their emotional responses, you'll keep living in a mental tug-of-war where your plans, your peace, and your self-respect all depend on whether someone else approves. That's not freedom. That's emotional captivity dressed up as loyalty. This internal conflict exists because, for most of your life, you measured your goodness by other people's comfort. If they were pleased, you were good. If they were disappointed, you were bad. That's why their reactions still feel so heavy. You're not just afraid of conflict, you're afraid of losing identity points. But adulthood demands a shift. Your values need to become the compass, not their reactions. When you detach from how they respond, you stop performing for their approval and start acting from your principles. And this is where Stoic practice shows its strength. You control your thoughts, your choices, and your character, not the emotional weather inside someone else. The calmer, more grounded version of you understands this, and it's what allows your boundaries to hold even when the room gets tense. One line helps anchor you in that separation. Their reaction is theirs. My decision is mine. You can say it before a conversation, after a message, or silently in the middle of an emotional moment. It reminds you that the two things, your boundary and their feelings, are not the same. If someone expresses disappointment, that's their emotion to manage. If someone gets irritated, that's their process. You don't have to fix it, absorb it, or adjust your choices to make it disappear. Let's put this into a common North American moment. It's a Wednesday evening in Houston or Montreal. You've had a long day at work and you finally sit down for dinner. You check your phone and see a voicemail from your mother. Her tone is sharp, not angry exactly, but edged with annoyance. She says she heard from your cousin that you won't be attending the family gathering next month, and she just wants to understand why you're pulling away. Immediately, your chest tightens. You weren't pulling away, you were simply choosing not to attend something that no longer fits your priorities. But the old belief awakens: if she's upset, you must have done something wrong. Your old reaction would be to call her back immediately with your heart racing, over-explain every detail of your decision, apologize for not consulting her, and scramble to make her feel better even if it means committing to something you don't want. You'd hang up feeling emotionally drained and locked into an event you never wanted to attend in the first place. But today, the shift begins. You listen to the voicemail once. You feel the emotional pull, but you don't act on it. You breathe. And you say to yourself, their reaction is theirs. My decision is mine. The line softens the internal weight you've carried for years. You call her back when you're calm, not when guilt tells you to. When she asks why you're not coming, you answer simply and without apology. She sighs, maybe comments on family drifting apart, maybe tries to nudge you toward reconsidering. You feel the familiar pull in your chest, but you repeat internally, their reaction is theirs. My decision is mine. You stay grounded. When the call ends, something powerful happens. The decision still belongs to you. And her feelings didn't erase your boundary. Your tiny action today is to choose one upcoming conversation or situation where you will apply that anchor line. Think of a place where someone's reaction tends to steer your choices, a visit you don't want to commit to, a request you need to decline, or a topic you want to handle calmly. Before the next engagement, say the line out loud once. Their reaction is theirs. My decision is mine. This prepares your nervous system to stay grounded when the emotion hits. Right now, let's slow down and let your body absorb this shift. Inhale through your nose, hold it gently, exhale slowly. Say the line quietly, their reaction is theirs. My decision is mine. Again, slower, their reaction is theirs. My decision is mine. Feel how the sentence separates pressure from responsibility. You're not being cold. You're reclaiming emotional adulthood, responsible for your choices, not for managing everyone else's feelings about them. Keep this anchor close, because soon we'll reach that Friday night situation I've been hinting at. Someone will react strongly, frustration, disappointment, maybe even guilt, and you'll see how this one sentence keeps you steady instead of spiraling into old habits. It's late on a Friday night. You finally made it home after a long week, the kind that leaves your shoulders tense and your brain running slower than usual. You drop your bag by the door, kick off your shoes, and think about ordering takeout and watching something simple, something that doesn't require thinking. You're halfway to the couch when your phone buzzes. It's a family group text that's been quiet for days. You glance at the screen, and the message pulls you right back into the exact dynamic you've been working to change. Your cousin is hosting a last-minute dinner tomorrow, and somehow your name came up. One of your aunt's texts, "We figured you'd come early to help set up like you always do." Before you can respond, another message appears, "We rely on you." You know that. Then your mom follows with, "It would mean a lot to everyone if you showed up this time." And just like that, the emotional pressure builds, expectation layered on assumption layered on guilt. It's the perfect storm. This is exactly the moment we talked about earlier. Your first instinct is the old one. The tightening in your chest. The familiar panic. The immediate sense that you're disappointing people. The urge to respond right away before the tension grows. Your thumb even hovers over the keyboard. In your mind, you start running through possible excuses, even though you don't actually owe anyone a reason. You almost step into the role you used to play, the one where you drop your plans, rearrange your life, and absorb the weight of everyone else's needs. You almost let the emotional hook pull you under. But something stops you. A quiet breath. A pause. You feel your shoulders drop a millimeter. Your mind recalls everything you've been practicing. First, you realize you don't have to respond immediately. That's the tool from earlier. So you place the phone face down on the counter. You walk to the sink and get yourself a glass of water, giving your nervous system room to settle. The group chat is still buzzing, but you're not reacting to it, not yet. Not on their timeline. Then the guilt spikes. Sharp, familiar, fast. You feel it rising, and you catch it. You remember the sentence from earlier, "I'm allowed to make this decision even if someone else doesn't like it." You say it quietly as you lean on the counter. Once. Then again, slower. The guilt doesn't disappear instantly, but it loses its grip. You're not 12 years old. You're not responsible for soothing the entire family. The spike fades enough for you to think clearly. You pick up the phone again and read the messages without absorbing the emotional weight. You're just observing. You recognize the next pattern too, the unspoken advice, the assumptions, the push to treat their expectation as your obligation. And right on cue, someone adds a comment about how family should come first, a familiar emotional hook. You feel the tug. But instead of letting it dictate your night, you breathe once and remember the anchor, "I care about you, but I'm not able to do that." You tap out a calm, steady reply, "I won't be able to help tomorrow, but I hope everything goes smoothly." You don't explain. You don't apologize. You don't negotiate. You send the message and put your phone down. There's silence in the thread for a moment. Then someone replies with disappointment. Another tries to guilt you lightly. And instead of spiraling, you say to yourself, their reaction is theirs. My decision is mine. That one line keeps you from opening the thread again to justify yourself. A minute later, your mom texts you privately, "Is everything okay?" You've been distant lately. This used to be the sentence that pulled you all the way back into the old role. But now you understand what's happening. She's not actually asking about your well-being. She's responding to a limit she wasn't expecting. You breathe once more. You resist the instinct to defend yourself. And instead you message back, "Everything's fine. I'm just choosing what works for me this weekend." Simple. Clear. No emotional labor. Before setting your phone down for the night, you take one more slow breath. In through your nose, hold, out through your mouth. You can almost feel the tools working together, the pause, the anchor scripts, the refusal to step into old roles, the separation between your decisions and their reactions. The storm is still happening in the group chat, but you're no longer inside it. You're standing outside, watching the weather without being soaked by it. You order your food. You curl up on the couch. And for the first time in a long time, you feel something you didn't expect to feel on a night like this: calm. You didn't explode. You didn't cave. You didn't defend your life. You simply claimed it. At its core, this lesson was about reclaiming ownership of your life from the expectations, pressures, and emotional habits your family taught you long before you had a choice. It was about shifting from reacting to every guilt spike or comment to responding with clarity, calm, and agency. It was about moving from mindless compliance to intentional decisions, decisions that honor your adult identity instead of the outdated child role they may still see. First, we looked at the moment your family tries to shape your decisions with comments or expectations and how quickly that turns into pressure if you're not aware of it. Then we dug into the guilt that rises the instant you try to set a boundary and how separating old stories from present choices gives you your power back. Next, you learned how to push back against uninvited advice without escalating the situation. After that, we broke down how to decline requests for time, money, or emotional labor without falling into over-explaining. Then we explored emotional hooks, those subtle pulls like disappointment or sentimental comments, and how to respond without sacrificing your peace. Later, you recognized the roles your family assigned you and how to step out of them so you're not living someone else's version of who you should be. We built on that by practicing how to detach your decisions from their reactions so their feelings don't control your life. And finally, you watched all those tools work together on that Friday night, where the old version of you would have caved or exploded, but the grounded version responded with calm intention. There are 3 things to do today that will help you lock this in. First, choose one boundary anchor sentence from this lesson and use it in the next family interaction that tries to pull you off center. Second, set one reply window for yourself and let your phone's notifications wait until you decide to engage. Third, write down the old family role you're no longer performing and practice stepping out of it by using the new identity-aligned responses you learned here. If this resonated with you, the natural next step is learning how to handle conflict that comes after a boundary is set. That's where we'll go deeper into emotional detachment, calm communication, and what to do when someone escalates because they don't like your new limits. Look for the upcoming lesson on when people push back, staying grounded when your boundaries are tested. If you want a whole library of Stoic Focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships, this is what we do here every week. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.